The tour was led by Luis Borello, and he's here today and will be giving a presentation on what we learned in Havana. Luis?
Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for being here, first of all. It's very important day. For the record, I think the third goal of the U.S. team was valid. So, with that background, I'm going to take the liberty of saying a couple of things. I have included 10 images, 10 slides from a presentation that I have called Semantics of Sustainability, because I think it's important that we clarify a couple of terms. I know that you're probably very well versed in sustainability yourselves, all over the office, all over Sparling. But for the experts, please bear with me and let's just get some common ground. After those 10 slides, we're going to go directly to Havana. I'm going to spend a little more time describing the program for historic preservation, because that is really the most important.
We can hear the other officers, but we can't hear the speaker.
Okay. They cannot hear? Can you hear me if I talk here?
Try to put it, because your mic is on. Try now.
Can you hear me now? Hello? Can you hear me? Raise your hand when you can hear me, basically. Is it on? Okay. Thank you.
The reason of what you might.
Okay. So how do we start the presentation? Okay, thank you so much. So I've inserted just 10 slides, and then we're going to devote some time to the preservation best practice in Havana, and then a little less time in urban agriculture, that is a subject of very high interest, and then we're going to mention a couple of other interesting lessons which we pointed out, but we're not going to delve in deeply. So just to get this clear, sustainability is a loaded word in our days, I guess. Most people heard about the not compromising the resources of the future, and I think that's a very nice way to put it. Other people have heard about people, planet, profit, triple bottom line. In general, we know that it's an economic accounting, basically, that has into account more than just the financial aspect of things. But even William McDonough defines it as economy, ecology, equity, and I think that's where I have a problem, because economy is actually all of this, and I'm going to actually go ahead and explain that, because I think that's the key issue to explaining Havana and sustainability in Havana. So those of you who know, I repeat, please forgive me, but we'll go through. So economy is a Latin word from the word stoico and nomis, and which translates to English best as management of a household. And that's what it really means, and it doesn't describe the household size. Basically, a household can be your house, can be your neighborhood, your city, or your country, or even the planet is a household in that term. The other thing that it is intrigued about is measuring everything that has value. There is use value and exchange value for the economists out there, and the use value we stopped measuring or being concerned with it like in the 3rd century, I believe that's when it was. I guess because we took for granted an infinite world, basically. Only now we're kind of waking up, because we know that the carbon that we put out has a limit on our global warming, and it needs to be accounted. So use value are those things that you cannot exchange for money, but you benefit from. For example, all the unmonetized activities that a family does, self-improvement, looking after the children, cooking for the family. Those are things of incredible value, but they're not monetized, so they have no exchange value. So basically, we forgot about use value, and we're focusing on exchange value, and now we're waking up with this new wave of sustainability. And the last thing that is important to have in mind is that it's about wealth, it's not about richness, because wealth is the amount of well-being there is. And we're used to hearing wealth as a bunch of money. Well, it's different. Wealth is well-being. As we understand economy, is richness. This is what we understand from economy. You probably heard about this, where the GDP is the main measurement of economic development in the world. And that's what we've been promoting for a while. The problem with GDP is that everything is positive. Even the negative things are very positive. The oil spill we're suffering now is great for the economy. $20 billion are coming into the system. Cancer is great for GDP. Accidents are great for GDP. That's a big problem with GDP as an indicator of economy. The other problem it has is that natural capital only comes into the inventory once it's spent. So a forest has no value in GDP terms, except when it's torn down to make wood and we put it into work. That's a big problem because we believe that it's infinite, the eco-services of the world, and we're realizing that they're not. And the other problem is that it doesn't have into account unmonetized services. That is what we talked about, is concerned with measuring emissions. So in order to understand this difference, it's important to talk about capital. And capital is a loaded word, but it's very simple to explain. If we go back to the Latin root, capital comes from the head of cattle, capita, the head of a cattle, because basically a cattle was wonderful. Whoever had a head of cattle had milk, had derivatives, if you want to look at it, cheese, had offspring, it had promise. And so whoever had a cow could come to a neighbor and exchange, the grass of his pasture for a bottle of milk tomorrow. He had a way of bringing present value, future value of that cow to present value today. And so the other thing to have into consideration is that capital as an entity that basically defines capitalism these days is a system of representation. It only exists as long as there are means of representing it and putting those means into the legal system. And we'll go into this in a little bit more. And the amount, wealth is to me the amount of capital, the amount of natural, social capital that you have, and also financial capital. So this is what I call a capital pyramid. You saw the first image in the cake here. It comes from a woman called Hazel Henderson that basically describes the economy as we know it as this upper layer of the cake, of the icing on the cake. It's basically the private sector enterprise is laying on a public sector that is strong, but it does not recognize all the social services and the natural capital services, or as she calls it, the love economy and the Mother Earth. And that is the principle of economy, and therefore detaching it from economy is wrong. So capital allows us to do this. And now there's ways to bring capital, to convert capital into money, and that's how we've heard of, whoever has capital. What they really mean is they have financial capital. Financial capital is nothing but the pinnacle of this pyramid. So natural capital includes all the ecosystems of the world, includes the land that we stand and that we build, and is actually the turning stone of the capitalist world. And so on. Social capital is the love economy, as I explained in a second. Built capital is all the means of production, all the assets that we have and that we convert into inventories. And based on those inventories, we can use as collateral, and we can change them. Then on top of that, there's intellectual capital, patents, copyrights, royalties, all this stuff that is, we can convert intellectual capital into currency through these means. Then political capital, that would sound like almost unimportant, to me is the most important one, is your credibility. Political capital is the backing of the capitalist system, and the treasury bonds actually are the ones that convert these political capital into US dollars actually. And in my opinion, that's what Obama did great. He restored the trust in the American system, and therefore the political capital survived. And finally, the financial capital, that is basically what we know of converting all these things into money, currency and paper money, and putting that to work, where you pay